Howdy y'all, you got the Bulldog on the channel. This is my second try at this video. Had a customer call in the middle of the last one. Never stops. But we're in this old Power Stroke that I worked on here a couple, 3 days ago. I've been working late at the other job last couple, 3 nights, and I've really just not been able to get back to this one. But I finally got home before dark today and took this thing out for a test drive. I fired it up and it sat there and run good. And I plugged the computer in, and as soon as the computer started talking to it, it died. Plonk. Fired right back up. But while I was going through the functional tests in my computer, because I have an actual computer, diagnostic computer, not a code reader. I'm not really trying to knock the big box parts stores too bad, because, you know, they're trying to get business in. But when you go to the parts store, they plug in their computer, especially one of them. They have a readout where it prints out the codes and suggested parts that you can buy to fix this code. That's not computers that diagnose your vehicle. That's code readers that sell parts. I don't know how many cars they actually fix, because if they get fixed there, I don't see them. But I will say there are a lot of cars that they don't fix, because I get them. But here's what I ran into on this old Powder Stroke. I put the fuel pump on there, the mechanical fuel pump, and put the fuel filter housing back in, changed all the hoses that are in underneath there, you know, because I had it out, might as well do it then. It's free, you know. Customer already had some hose and some clamps. Just went ahead and did that while I had it apart. And I took it off down the road, and when I let out of it, it died. Plonk. And then when I started it back up, it kind of ran kind of ratty a little bit. Well, I tried to make the corner down there, it died again. It died on me, I think 3 times in the process of trying to turn around and get back home. But then I stood on it a little bit coming home and let out of it, and it ran fine. And I pulled it in the shed, and it ran fine, and plugged the computer in, and as soon as the computer started to talk, it died. I fired it back up and ran fine. And then when the computer booted up and I tried to access the codes, it died. And when I hit the key again, it fired right back up and ran fine. After digging in my diagnostic computer, it had a note in there that said that certain tests can cause the engine to stall. So I had called the customer to make sure that this is not a symptom he'd had before, and he said, nope, no problem at all. Well, yeah, I can believe that, because, you know, that stuff happens. I got home tonight, and I plugged in the computer, and as soon as it started to talk, it died. I kind of figured that. I took off down the road. It's run great, you know, no issue whatsoever. So just a communication issue with a diagnostic computer that causes the engine to stall on occasion. You know, this was the early days. This is a 97 truck. This is the early days of OBD2, onboard diagnostics. The second go around, we're on the 4th or 5th. I remember back in those years, watching the commercials for the Dodge Intrepid. It was back in the early 90s, and it was saying that the computer did 2 million calculations per second. And I watched that thinking, I wasn't even a mechanic yet. I worked on stuff. I wasn't a mechanic yet. And I heard that 2 million calculations per second, and I'm thinking, that's a lot of calculations, and only one of them has to be wrong. And that's what we got right here. We got a communication issue between diagnostic computer and the truck that causes a stall on occasion. So what I was doing when I took it out for the test drive the first time is exactly what I thought it was: air in the system, which worked itself out by the time I got back. And every stall after that was me trying to find out why it stalled. Just a lot of wasted time. But, I am relatively certain that we're fixed, because, that I've made every attempt to recreate the conditions that I was experiencing the first night, and I've had no issue since then. And every time I recreate the condition of plugging in the computer, it dies. So just another one of them things that just makes you, it's going the extra step to make sure that you're giving the vehicle back to the customer and it's fixed. I called the customer the next morning and asked him about it, and he said no, he's not had any issues, and but well, here's what I think. I told him I think that has something to do with the computer, and it's just a fluke. And he says, well, I'll just leave it there until it's fixed, because he doesn't want to be taking a problem back. And yeah, we're pretty confident now. But this is one of those things where, as a customer, I'm telling everybody out there, as a customer, have a little patience with your mechanic, especially if he's a good one and you've gone to him for a while. He might just be doing his due diligence to make sure that he's not giving you back a problem. And every once in a while you have something like this that happens, and there actually is another problem, something that they haven't even experienced before, and it just, some people have asked me, well, why did it fail then? Well, everything has to pick a time. Yes, it is odd that it chose to fail while I was working on something else, but it happens. Not often, but it happens. I will say this. I had a guy come in simply for an oil change. That's all. Just an oil change. I changed his oil, and I got back in the truck, and it wouldn't start. Click, 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 click. What the heck, And get in underneath there, and we test the starter, and the starter's getting signal, and it's actually getting through the solenoid on the side of the starter. Put a mirror up in there and look, and the wire between the starter solenoid and the starter motor was burned clear in two. When he started it at home to bring it there to get the oil changed, it burned the wire in two, and it didn't it shut off until it got pulled in the shop. And it just chose that day, that moment, to fail. That stuff happens. There's nothing that you can do to cause it. There's plenty of deals out there where a mechanic works on something and they've caused a problem. That happened this morning. I had a customer, I was going to be late for work to do this, but his daughter needed the vehicle to go somewhere this weekend. They needed it fixed. They needed to know what was wrong, and we didn't want to wait a couple days to get in to find out what was wrong, because then what if he needed parts? So we agreed that he'd come over this morning, and I put it up on the lift. 2 years ago, it had a collision in the right front corner, and they put, I don't know, struts and an A-arm on it or something like that at another garage. I don't know who did it, and it's an oversight, but we were thinking, oh, it's got bad ball joints, it's got, bushing's bad or something like that, and we got to looking at it. The bolts were loose. Most of the bolts that they had put in there on the lower A-arm were loose, and the entire suspension was shifting around. If they stay loose long enough and shift around long enough, it wears the bolt into, and your wheel parts ways with you. And it's just not a good thing for your steed to become three-legged, running down the interstate 70 mile an hour. We got him all tightened up, and he took off happy. So things like that do happen, but that's where, as a mechanic, I'm talking mechanics out there now, it's your responsibility to do your due diligence and ensure that you've got it done, not just worked on, fixed. But like, comment, subscribe. There's little buttons that are down there. Share it around. Let everybody know that I'm out here. And hit the little bell notification. That'll tell you when I got a new video coming out. And we'll talk at y'all later.